You're listening to the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast with Paula Engebretson, episode number 247. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you? I hope you had an amazing week. If you listened to last week's episode, number 246, you know that it was part one of a two-part episode all about how we can navigate our big feelings in more discreet ways, especially when we are in public. So last week we talked about how we can start identifying these common emotions that we all experience, especially with ADHD, feelings like overwhelm and anxiety and frustration and embarrassment and shame. And we focused on creating much greater awareness of when and why these emotions show up. Because when we build up that awareness, we're going to have a much easier time implementing the actual strategies that help us regulate these emotions in real time. By recognizing these emotions and knowing when they're more likely to show up and understanding how they physically feel in our bodies, we are then able to identify them a bit earlier in the experience and maybe even plan ahead to know which supports might be useful in different situations. And today, in part two of this series, we're talking about exactly that. We are looking at specific strategies and methods that we can use to help us navigate our big feelings when stepping away from the situation is either not the choice we want to make or we can't. Now, of course, stepping away and giving ourselves some space to actually regulate is truly one of the best gifts we can give ourselves. But like I said, I also know it's not always an option or the choice we want to make, okay? So the strategies that we are exploring today are here to allow you to better soothe your system while also staying present in the moment, even when you're having these big feelings. And the first set of discrete strategies or tools for your toolkit focus on breathing. So as I share the different options, I encourage you to kind of note what they are, notice how the idea feels, maybe do the pattern a couple of times and see which one feels most available, most supportive for you. My guess is you've probably heard of a couple of these before, maybe all of them, and making a space to practice them a couple of times might help you to go, oh, you know what? This one actually sounds pretty supportive. Or this one, nope, don't like it. I don't want to have to keep counting my breaths. What else is there? Okay, so just notice which ones land for you. So the first one, we have three different breathing patterns that I'm going to share. The first is box breathing. And this is a method that just involves 4 equal parts of breathing. So you inhale, you hold, you exhale, you hold again. And so you inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4. So you're breathing in for 4 through your nose. Then you hold your breath for another count of 4. Then you slowly exhale through your mouth for a count of 4. And then you hold your breath again for a count of 4. And then you start the cycle over. So that's why it's called box breathing, because it's 4, 4, 4, 4, like a box. Okay. This is effective because that equal parts of breathing and holding your breath can help to regulate the nervous system and promote that sense of balance and calm. Okay, so that can be a powerful one to turn to. And because it's not complicated, it's just 4, 4, 4, 4, it can be easier to remember. Okay, now the second breathing pattern is a little more complex just because it has different numbers. And I think I might have mentioned this on the podcast maybe last week when I talked about how to rest, but this is the 4-7-8 breathing pattern. Okay. So this technique emphasizes a longer exhale. So you're inhaling quietly through your nose for a count of 4. Then you're holding your breath for a count of 7. And then you're exhaling completely through your mouth for a count of 8. So here we have the extended exhale, which helps to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And this again can help slow the heart rate and promote relaxation and calm. And then we have the third breathing approach. Now, I especially love this last technique because it literally doesn't involve counting at all. So for me, if I'm especially activated or I'm feeling really embarrassed or something like that, I like to turn to this one. And this focuses on diaphragmatic breathing. Okay, so we're focusing on deep belly breaths, essentially, rather than shallow chest breathing. So If you can, you might put your hands on your belly. And if not, no problem, right? Like if you're standing in a group and people can see you, maybe you don't want to put your hand on your belly. Usually the table is up higher anyway. But if you can put your hand on your belly and then you deeply inhale through your nose and you're focusing on your diaphragm moving outward rather than your chest. So we want to be really like expanding your diaphragm, kind of where your rib cage is, rather than up in your chest where your lungs are. Okay. So we've breathed in, we've filled our lungs, and we've started way down at our rib cage, and imagine kind of stretching it outward. And then we're exhaling slowly and smoothly. And again, your hand on your belly is what's going to be moving the most. It's not your chest moving, it's down near your belly. And diaphragmatic breathing is interesting because it increases the supply of oxygen to your brain, and it stimulates, again, the parasympathetic nervous system, inducing that state of calmness. So each of these breathing techniques can be very discreet, but also quite powerful to help calm your nervous system, to bring your prefrontal cortex back online, which makes it easier to contribute to the meeting or to ask questions for clarification and to figure out next steps forward. Okay, so that's strategy or tool for your toolkit number 1 is breathing. Now, up next are a couple of different grounding techniques that we can use to help divert that focus from feeling really overwhelmed or anxious or frustrated or what have you, and all those racing thoughts, and bring us back to the present moment. And this is often by engaging our senses. Okay, so these methods I think are really effective, like I said, when we're feeling anxious or overwhelmed or frustrated, and it can really help to alleviate that experience. Okay, so here's how we can apply some of the different grounding techniques. The first is the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. So this method involves using your 5 senses, and doing so helps you focus on the present moment. Now, this 5-4-3-2-1, I probably wouldn't do it in a one-on-one with my boss, but if I'm feeling overwhelmed in a big team meeting and I notice that I'm past my capacity, or if I'm in an overstimulated environment, maybe I'm at a concert or something, and I want to bring myself back to my personal experience, this 5-4-3-2-1 can be really useful. So here's how it works. First, take a couple of breaths, bring you back, and then you're going to look around and you're going to identify 5 different things you can see. So you look around and just pause and identify the different things. I might look at my water bottle. I might notice the stitching of the shawl I'm crocheting. I might look at the computer mouse in my hand, right? Look around and see 5 things. Then you go to 4 things you can touch. So maybe I hold my water bottle and I notice that it's cold, right? Or I pick up the soft shawl that I'm working on, right? The thing that I'm crocheting. So you're focusing on the 5 things you can see, the 4 things you can touch, then the 3 things you can hear. So it is super windy right now. I can definitely hear the wind blowing outside. I can hear the heat just kick on. And I can hear the car I just drove by, right? So really pausing and focusing what I hear and bringing that to my attention. 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can smell. So maybe I just put on this, what is this? Shea butter coconut lotion, right? I can definitely smell that. And maybe I'm drinking coffee or something and I can smell the coffee. And then from there, 1 thing you can taste. Maybe you just brushed your teeth and you have that minty taste, or you just drank the coffee and you can taste that coffee. So 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. And the process of slowing down and identifying these things encourages your mind to shift its focus from all of the distressing thoughts and those big feelings to your immediate environment in front of you. Plus, the multisensory approach can help interrupt those escalating emotions a bit and provide some calm soothing as well. And then the second option in terms of grounding focuses on our physical sensations as we anchor ourselves in the present. And this is called physical grounding. Okay. So this is a much less complex technique. You're not looking for lots of different things. And because of this, I actually think it's discreet enough to use in settings with fewer people. Like I said, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 can work great when you're maybe overwhelmed in a big space and there's lots of things around, you're feeling overstimulated, or maybe you're in a big meeting and you're feeling kind of overwhelmed by everything. You might do it there. This specific technique of physical grounding can actually be discreet enough to do with just a few people. And the way that this works is engaging in simple physical activities like pressing your feet firmly into the ground and noticing the sensation of the chair and how it supports you. That's what we're doing. I notice how my feet are pressing into the ground. I notice how the back of the chair is supporting my back. Or maybe you touch a few objects around you. So maybe you have your coffee cup, and again, you put your hand around the mug, you notice that it's warm. And then maybe you feel the smooth band of your ring, and you squish the rubber grip on your pen. All my pens, I love these big Velocity pens. That's not a sponsor, but they have this rubber grip, right? Maybe you squish that rubber grip on your pen. The reason why physical grounding techniques are effective is that they help shift your focus, again, from the big emotions or the racing thoughts to the actual physical sensations in front of you. And this can be much more tangible and much more easy to manage in the moment. Okay, so those are our grounding techniques. Next up, using pressure points. Okay, so another approach to help us ground and regulate when we're feeling these big emotions, but we don't actually want to leave the situation, is to use pressure points on your hand or on your wrist. So in this situation, you might, first of all, find the pressure point, which is located kind of in that squishy area between your thumb and your index finger. I'm pointing to it on the video if you're watching YouTube, but it's that kind of squishy part right between the thumb and your forefinger, or the part kind of on your inner wrist, 3 fingers down or so. Let's see if I can show this, 3 fingers down right there on your wrist. And essentially using your thumb and your index finger of your opposite hand in that squishy part between your thumb and your pointer, you can apply this gentle but firm pressure to that point. Okay, so we're applying that pressure. For your wrist, you might use your thumb to kind of press gently but firmly into that area. And we're going to hold that pressure. We're going to maintain that pressure while taking some slow breaths for maybe a minute or two and focusing on the sensation and focusing on your breathing. Okay, and maybe you release the pressure and then you repeat it on the other hand if you need to. I think this is a really interesting one because when you're pressing on these pressure points, studies suggest that it stimulates the nerve endings and creates blood circulation in that area. And that can, first of all, help relax muscles and reduce tension, but also release endorphins and start activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which again promotes that sense of calm and relaxation, right? It's to help ground you and soothe. Now, the next technique we're going to talk about is progressive muscle relaxation. So this is a technique that I think is really helpful with reducing stress and alleviating tension, and especially effective when we're feeling frustrated. Okay, so essentially it involves this systematic tensing and then releasing of muscles in your body. Now, traditionally, this is actually more of a full body scan. So you might lay down and kind of move upward from your toes up, tensing each muscle group for 5 seconds or so and releasing it. Now, my guess is you're not going to just lay down in your meeting, start doing this body scan, tensing all of your muscles. However, you can approach it in a more subtle way. So instead of this full body scan approach, you might try focusing on tensing and relaxing your toes inside your shoes. Or you clench and unclench your hands in your lap. Or maybe you have a stress ball on your desk that you can squeeze. Or maybe you just stretch out your legs really far underneath the table, right? Kind of stretch them out and make them tense and then let them relax. And you can combine that muscle relaxation with those deep controlled belly breaths like we talked about before. And these two can really complement each other well as you kind of move through that frustration. And also, I will say, you might be able to relax some of your facial muscles too. You may notice that your face is already holding a lot of tension. This is pretty common when we're feeling frustrated. I know for myself, my jaw gets incredibly tense. Maybe you notice that your brow gets furrowed or your tongue is like pushed up really to the top of your mouth or whatever. So check in with your face. Maybe your brow is furrowed, so you release that. Then you unclench your jaw. You let your tongue drop down from the roof of your mouth. All of that's going to promote this release of the tension and the frustration that you may have been kind of holding in your face without realizing it, if you're like me. So all of these approaches can be effective options to help support these feelings of frustration so you can keep showing up in the way you want to without potentially saying things you wish you wouldn't. But I want to also say, as with all of these supports, just because you're helping to calm and regulate yourself in the moment doesn't mean that we just kind of push them aside after. Okay, I highly encourage you to, once you have quiet space, check in with yourself. Okay, so check in after that meeting. Check in when you have time to be with those bigger feelings as well, because they are there waiting to be felt. We don't want to keep pushing them away. But when we're in the moment and we have lots of people around and we don't want to be kind of reacting, these can be really powerful supports in the moment. All right, the last support that I want to examine today focuses on compassionate self-talk and anchoring phrases. Okay, these are, again, helpful for all of the different types of emotions we've explored, but I find it especially impactful and, frankly, one of the most powerful when we are navigating shame or embarrassment. Okay, so practicing compassionate self-talk and pairing it with an anchor phrase. What does this actually look like? Well, let's say that you maybe made a mistake in a presentation or you got critical feedback at work. Okay, so first we want to breathe and acknowledge what happened. So maybe you take a deep breath, you center yourself, and you just in your mind silently acknowledge the discomfort of that shame. We're not trying to push it away. We're not trying to get away from it. We literally recognize it, because recognizing it can actually help lessen its grip. I know this sounds counterintuitive. If we notice it, then we might think, but if I see it, it's just going to get bigger. It's actually the opposite quite often. So if we can recognize it, it can loosen its grip a little bit. I often just think to myself, oh, hey, shame, I see you. There you are. That's it. Okay. So we pause, we breathe, we go, whew, hey, shame. Or, oof, hey, embarrassment, how you doing? I see you. Okay. And then from there, we're going to use our anchoring phrase. So an anchoring phrase is a simple, easy to remember phrase. And the point of this phrase is to remind you that we are all human, that we all make mistakes, and that this moment doesn't define you or who you are. Because honestly, when we are in these moments, it really does feel like it's everything. It defines us and who we are, and we're, all the things. The brain just really has a heyday if left unchecked. Okay. And I think having an anchoring phrase that is very compassionate and a powerful reminder that we are all humans can be really powerful. Okay. Now, your phrase can be anything you want it to be, but this is important. It can be anything you want it to be as long as you actually believe it. Okay. This is key. We can't just slap positive affirmations on a situation if we don't believe them, because that doesn't work. That is called toxic positivity. So we need to make sure that we actually believe the anchoring sentence that we're thinking. One of my absolute favorites, I actually have an entire podcast episode on it, and it's the phrase, there I go being human again. Right? That is what I think. If I do something and I'm like super embarrassed or I'm frustrated at myself because I messed something up or whatever, if I'm the obstacle in the way of my frustration, I might think, well, there I go being human again. And I just find it light and true. And it just helps me remember, yeah, I'm human and that's okay. I will link to that episode in the show notes, by the way, if you're interested. I first heard the phrase from another coach named Jody Moore, and it's such a game changer for me. So I will link to that in the show notes. Now, your phrase does not need to be that, of course. It might be something like, this is a tough moment, and it's only a moment. right? You're acknowledging that it's hard, and you're reminding yourself it's not everything. It's just this one moment. Now, if you're struggling to think of an anchoring phrase, you could also consider what you might tell a friend. And I know that you may have heard this before and you're like rolling your eyes, but honestly, it does make a difference. What would you tell a friend or your sister or anybody who you love dearly? Right? It's okay. You're doing your best. Mistakes happen. You've got this. Some of my other favorite phrases are actually quite simple. I love to just think, hey, I've got you. Or I see you. Or if it was one that really stung, it's like, oof, that hurt. I'm going to take care of you. Don't worry. I see you. They're just these little sentences that help ground me and see me, right? I see you. I know that hurt. I've got you. We're going to move through this. Okay. So I'm giving you a bunch of different options. I think it can be helpful to pre-select a few. Okay. Have a couple of anchoring phrases at the ready at any time. So that way, if those waves of embarrassment or shame or frustration, whatever come up, you have something to turn to and ground yourself. And then if you can pair that with some deep belly breaths or grounding your feet, pressing your feet into the floor, or gently applying that pressure to the pressure point on your wrist or the point between your thumb and your pointer finger, anything like that can help further bring you back into the moment. When we apply compassionate self-talk and that anchoring phrase during the immediate onset of the strong emotion, whether it's shame or embarrassment, what have you, you help support yourself while also gently regulating your emotions so you're less likely to shut down or shame spiral, if you know those shame spirals, right? Instead, it allows you to stay present. And then once you have that quiet time, you can really take care of yourself and your needs. All right. So whether it's overwhelm or anxiety or frustration or embarrassment or shame, again, we all know these big emotions. And while navigating them is never a fun time, it is often even less so when they bubble up around lots of other people and we're having these big feelings, trying to remember how to not act on them. Now, fortunately, when we can have some of these discrete go-to practices to help us regulate our emotions, we can then support ourselves a bit more easily through the big waves when they come. Now, as a reminder, not all strategies work for each person. Okay, so creating your personalized toolkit is kind of like putting together your favorite playlist. We're not all going to have the same one. It's personalized to you. So it's all about finding the supports that actually resonate and that really do make a notable difference in your emotional experience. So I actually encourage you to approach these strategies from a place of curiosity and test them out. Test them out before you actually need them in real time. So you might try reflecting on a past experience, not a really big one, but just a past experience where you know, oh yeah, I was totally frustrated the other day when I couldn't get this piece of tech to work or whatever. And then try out that practice and notice how it lands for you. And as you go through this process, you can jot down the approaches that do work and jot them down in a place where you can easily find them. Maybe you pin the note in your notes app, or you save it on your phone's screensaver, or you write your favorites on a sticky note and it sits right on your computer monitor. Okay. And most importantly, be sure to check in on yourself on the other side when you have that next quiet moment, because those emotions are still waiting to be felt. I know you're sick of hearing me say that, but it's true. Okay, we don't want to let that go. Now, as a quick reminder, all the different strategies we explored today, we have, first of all, our 3 different breathing patterns. We have the 2 different grounding techniques. We have making use of the pressure points. We have progressive muscle relaxation, and then compassionate self-talk with anchoring phrases. All of these different approaches are beautiful, discrete ways to help you move through your big emotions, even when you're around other people, so that you can stay present and grounded and keep showing up in a way that's supportive for you. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you're ready to learn how to regulate your big emotions, both in real time and in those quiet moments I keep talking about, if you're ready to learn how to support your ADHD in a way that's best for you, I invite you to check out today's show notes where you can learn more about how we can work together, both in my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome, and in one-on-one coaching. Also, if you want to learn my simple step-by-step approach to locking in a routine and making it stick, be sure to check out my free course, The ADHD Routine Revamp. You can tap through the link in the show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/routine to sign up. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.